There we are. Can we all see that? Okay. Fantastic, thank you. So my name's Nicola Smith, and I am the Employer Support Lead for the SCQF Partnership. And this is part of a series of webinars that we're doing this week for SCQF Week. So if anyone feels the urge to tweet about it or post about it in any social media channels, feel free to use hashtags. And I tend to be more active on LinkedIn than in Twitter. So please join me on LinkedIn if you want to find out more about the sort of work that we do. So I'll pop that link later on in the chat. So in my role as employer support lead, I support employers with a whole range of different things. I help them understand what the SCQF is in the first place, and we'll look at that this morning. I help employers understand the wide range of alternative qualifications that are out there that people can now take that are beyond the mainstream qualifications, and how you can compare them to those better known ones. I also help people use the SCQF to recognise equivalent skills and experience at different SCQF levels, which is extremely useful for those people who have been working for a long time, but maybe haven't taken qualifications for the last 20, 30 years. How do you capture where they're working? We can benchmark job roles against the SCQF so that you know what types of qualification or experience you're looking for. I can also help with credit rating your in-house training if you wanted to have your training placed on the SCQF. And all of this can help with recruitment and retention. So first of all, I'll do a little quick run through of what the SCQF actually is. So the SCQF was created 22 years ago by professionals across all ranges of areas of education in Scotland. People who were involved in education in schools, colleges, universities, workplace, vocational education, and also community learning and development as well. And they got together and they said, moving into this new century, we really need something that brings together all of these qualifications in the one place so that people can recognise how difficult different types of learning is. Because partly there was a feeling that moving forward into this century, your more skills-based vocational qualifications are actually, rather than having been seen as possibly a second rate, which I'm certainly not saying they are, qualification in the past, that actually these may become more and more important moving into this century. So from this, the SCQF was born. And we have one set of what we call level descriptors that describes what a learner has to be able to do to achieve a qualification at each level. And that set of benchmarks is there so that any type of qualification from art to zoology can be credit rated and placed on the SCQF. And what that allows you to do is say that, for example, a hire, which sits at SCQF level 6, you can say that an SBQ at level 6 or an apprenticeship at level 6 is the same difficulty of learning. And that helps people recognise, understand, and properly rate the other types of qualifications. So let's get ourselves orientated a little bit in the SCQF. So at level 6, as I said, we have a hire. And I always come in with that one because it's the one that everyone knows. It's not changed its name for a very long time, which is great. So my favourite statistic, though, is that of all the qualifications we have on the SCQF at level 6, only 7% of those are hires. So there's a whole range of qualifications out there at the same level of difficulty that if you were putting a job advert out that asked for hires, you could be missing out on a whole range of people with some fantastic skills that actually may be more relevant to your job roles. So moving up from SCQF level 6 to 7, that is the level where you'll find advanced hire, but it's also the same level as your first year at college and your first year at university. So this is another important thing about the SCQF. It was created to allow people to find the right pathways for them. So it may be that you may have not done so well in school, but you do want to go to university in the future. Not that that is the be all and end all. So you might go through college and then maybe you'll be able to move into a higher year and continue your studies up that way. You may come across this way and move into the vocational route. You may move in all sorts of different directions, going from there up into university. What it does is it allows different pathways for different types of learning. And very key, it gives that parity of esteem between all the different types of qualifications at the same level. So moving up, 8 is where you'll find HND, so your second year at university and a range of other qualifications. 9 would be bachelor's, an ordinary degree. 10 would be honours, 11 masters, and 12 a doctorate. Now I'm giving these better known qualifications because those are the ones that people understand. It just helps you orientate with the SCQF. But there are so many other qualifications out there at these different levels, it lets you see the value of an SBQ at level 9 is the same level of difficulty as an ordinary degree. So because we have the one set of level descriptors that underpins the whole framework, we can also take qualifications from anywhere. If it's being done in the workplace, if it's private learning providers, learning that's being done in the community, adult youth work, a whole range of different qualifications can also be benchmarked, credit rated to the SCQF. So that allows us to bring in things like these, for example. So at any given time, we've got 11,500 qualifications on the SCQF, and about 1,000 of those qualifications are these community and workplace and private learning provider qualifications. So if we jump in at just level 6 again, you can see these ones here, the SLQ Sports Leadership, Comedy and Confidence, these are ones that can slot straight into the curriculum in secondary schools. And we're finding this a lot now. We're working in over 2/3 of secondary schools in Scotland, helping them broaden out the range of qualifications that young people can take in school. When we describe our qualifications, we give them 2 numbers. So we've talked about the level of difficulty, but we also give them a number of credit points, and that's based on purely how long it takes to learn a qualification. So when you're comparing, or to gain a qualification, I should say, when you're comparing qualifications, it's important to think about the level of difficulty and how long it took to achieve it. So these ones here slot straight into the curriculum with 24 credit points, the same as a higher, and they're far more skills-based, far more thinking about the types of skills that people might need, particularly the second one if you're moving into public-facing roles, or if you're moving into any area of sports leadership. So there's huge range. This is just a wee drop in the ocean of some of these different qualifications. You'll also see on the framework a range of different qualifications helping adults get back into work, helping young people for whom school wasn't working for them and they've gone a different route. Qualifications that show a range of different types of skills, which are very valuable and could be the exact type of skills that you're looking for. There's also a wide range of qualifications done in the workplace from level 1 all the way up to level 11. People like Historic Environment Scotland, for example, they're teaching skills which are not taught anywhere else because they are dying out skills. So they've created their own qualifications and had them credit rated to the SCQF. People like the NHS, a whole range of other different types of qualifications can be captured in this way. So people may have taken these qualifications while they've been in a job, and they might come to you to apply for a job with you. And this is where using SCQF levels really helps. So what we encourage people to do is to put the SCQF level of their qualifications on their CV and application forms so that you can understand it better and relate it back to those qualifications that we know and understand a little bit better. So I said we would look down the way in levels. So here we are. This is looking back in time. So it just helps people get an idea. If you've not got young people at school at the moment, you might be a little bit confused by the whole nationals 1 to 5. So higher sits at level 6, as we know. National 5 is named because it sits at SCQF level 5. And it's equivalent in the past to a standard grade credit, so that's a 1 or 2 at standard grade, or a good pass at O grade. National 4, which young people may be taking in their 4th year or 5th year, is equivalent to a standard grade general, is equivalent to a lower pass at O grade. And same going all the way down. In the noughties, these ones here crept in because going back to those learning pathways to help people learn at the speed in the way that they are capable of learning. If you did a foundation standard grade, far too big a jump to go up to higher. So these intermediate steps were created, and those went on to become your national 4s and 5s. So it's all about providing learning at the speed that people can manage, in the right types of learning and the right types of assessment for people to really show what they are capable of doing. This is a useful leaflet we have. It's called Qualifications Can Cross Boundaries. And what it does is it compares the Scottish National Qualifications Framework, the SCQF, to frameworks across the rest of the UK and Ireland. So again, this is useful if people are applying for jobs. The green one here is the framework for the Republic of Ireland, and it's exactly same as us. It's all within the one framework. So you'll see the levels are set at slightly different places, but we can map across. So if someone came with a level 5 certificate from the Republic of Ireland, that is comparable to an SCQF level 6, and you can map them across from there. The other 3 frameworks are the slightly less obvious situation that we have across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So they cover, very often you'll find your mainstream school qualifications on this yellow one, which is the RQF. So you'll see that GCSE maps across to a national 5 if it's at A star to C. If you've got a lower grade at GCSE, just like the standard grades and O grades of the past for us, it maps across to a national 4. Your A levels and AS levels sit at their level 3, which maps across to an SCQF level 6. Or if you've got very good passes, it's eking into level 7 there. So if a qualification is on the SCQF, it will have on its certificate the SCQF level and the number of credit points. So you can ask people applying for your jobs to tell you that information. It will be on their certificates. And if they're coming from any of these other places, you can map across and find the equivalent. If you want to find out about qualifications that are currently on the SCQF or have been in the past, we have a database on our website, and I'll send you a link. In fact, I've sent you a link already in the chat where you can go and have a look where all this information is sitting in our support for employers section. So the database, you can search by subject area, you can search by keywords, and if you're looking for a qualification that someone's done in the past, if it's been on for the last 8 or so years since we created the database, then you can tick the archive box, leave the range of levels open and run a search. If you can't find it, go back to the person who's applying and ask them to look on their certificate and see if they have it on there. You can also use this if you've identified a training need within your workforce and you're looking for a course, again, subject area, keywords. This time you'd want to narrow down your search. You want to know where your employees are working, what level they're capable of working at, so you get the right type of training. You don't want the archives, and click on search again, and it'll give you a list of the different types of qualifications that are out there and a little bit more information so you can find out where you can take them. So that pretty much covers it for the understanding qualifications side of things. So as you've seen, there are a wide range of different qualifications that are out there that are not your mainstream qualifications, and that just lets you see how you can compare them to the ones that you maybe understand a little bit better, and shows that if you were purely using degree or equivalent or hires or national 5s, then you might be missing out on a whole range of people with a range of fantastic skills and experience that might be just perfect for your job role. However, qualifications are not the only thing out there, And it may sound kind of strange for a qualification framework to say that, but another important part of our role is to help people benchmark their skills and experience to the SCQF, even if they don't have qualifications to back it up. So we have a fantastic piece of kit. Well, we've got two things here that you can see on the screen. We have an employer's guide, and it'll take you through how to use the SCQF in recruitment selection, workforce development, and also how to have your in-house training recognised on the SCQF. But we also have the employer levelling tool that document uses. And the levelling tool is just like those level descriptors that tell you what a learner has to be able to do to gain a particular level of qualification. The levelling tool tells you, what does an employee look like if they are working at a particular level? So one of our favourites is always degree or equivalent. Quite often, people who are sifting and weeding out, doing the sift of applications during the recruitment process, they'll quite often, if somebody doesn't have a degree, it will just go because they're not too sure what that equivalent actually is. So we've talked about equivalent in qualifications. Now this is equivalent in skills and experience. So a degree is a bit difficult anyway, because ordinary degrees at level 9, honours degrees at SCQF level 10. So this is what somebody working at level 9 looks like. So when people are looking at their job roles, I always suggest jumping, first of all, at look at your job competencies. Not all of them will be as relevant as each other, so think about the ones that are the most relevant and decide if that describes your job role. Then you can have a look at the responsibilities, tasks and duties, see if that describes the type of person you need in that job role. If not, then you can move down and look at the level below. And you might find that that actually fits your needs better. So this process of benchmarking your job role to the SCQF is a really important one. Because if you decide that actually it's more of an SCQF level 8 job, then you've now opened up to people with HNDs, SDQs, apprenticeships at level 8, whole range of other qualifications at level 8, and also people who can explain to you and describe to you why their skills and experience fits level 8. So when we're talking to employers, we try to encourage them to do a few things. First of all, properly benchmark your qualifications to the SCQF using the tool that we've just looked at. Secondly, recognise those alternative qualifications, the alternative to the mainstream ones that are much better known and usually asked for. Be open to recognising skills and experience as well as or instead of qualifications. And to use SCQF levels in your recruitment rather than specific qualifications. So that's what we have here. So instead of saying a minimum of 3 hires, you could use, this is the wording that we use, this role would suit someone working at SCQF level 6. And that's quite good for some of the lower levels because it's opening up to a wider range of people. And what we've done is we've created web links to a page on our website, which has the information that you've just looked at on the page. I'll not click on it because it will take me away from here. So other wording, it very much depends on the job role that you're looking at. Now, some job roles you have to have a specific qualification because you have a regulatory body. But most of job roles that are out there that you would be recruiting for, you can open up in this way. And if you do this, you're widening your pool of applicants, and you're making sure you're not excluding anyone from applying for your job. So if you do all of that, you can become one of our SCQF Inclusive Recruiters. We are trying, it's a recognition scheme, and we are trying to change the language around recruitment. The SCQF is extremely well understood in education circles, and we're trying to make sure now that that understanding moves out to employers and the wider population. So there's a range of different things we're involved in. We are encouraging the population as a whole to recognise their skills and experience using a Know Your Level tool on our website. We are working with the Ministry of Defence to help veterans and service leavers understand where they are working on the framework and where the qualifications of taken in service sit. We're working with Glasgow Caledonian University on a pilot project called Skills Recognition Scotland, which helps migrants coming from all over the world benchmark their skills and experience and qualifications to the SCQF. So as people start changing and describing themselves in terms of SCQF levels, we also need job roles to be reflecting that as well. And that way you can open out and be as wide as possible with your recruitment. So everything I've discussed here today is on our website, and I've popped that web link in the chat and also my email address. So please, if you want to find out more, it's been a very quick romp through this morning, but if you want to find out more, please get in touch. And I'd be very, very happy to have a chat with you one-to-one. We're going to hear now from one of our inclusive recruiters, Scotrail, who are sitting on that picture somewhere. It's getting difficult to find them. There they are. And Scotrail have started the journey towards fully using SCQF levels. You don't have to be fully using them in everything you're doing in order to be an SCQF inclusive recruiter, but you need to make a pledge to be moving towards that. So Craig's going to tell us a little bit about his journey to date. And Craig is also a fantastic advocate for this because, as he will tell you, he would not be in his job role today if his job role had been advertised as degree or equivalent. So I will let you take it from there, Craig. Thank you so much for listening. And if anybody wants to get in touch, please feel free.
Thanks, Nicola. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully this works. So, as Nicola mentioned, my name's Craig McFadzean and I am Scotrail's Education and Employability Manager. I'm going to give a very short talk / presentation on why we signed up to being an inclusive recruiter, where we currently are and where we're going and where we want to be in the future. I've been working with Scotrail for 9 months now, having spent the last 8 years working in education and worked a lot with the SCQF framework in terms of curriculum development in schools and stuff like that. So let me see if this works. So just a wee bit about Scotrail. If you don't already know, as of the 1st of April 2022, we moved from privately owned franchise to being owned by Scottish Government, and we are currently overseen by Scottish Rail Holdings. Scotrail deliver probably around 1 million passenger journeys each year. We have over 2,000 intercity, regional and suburban rail services a day. We've got more than 340 stations and 800 trains across Scotland's railway. And we have 9 different fleets, 4 diesel and 5 electric. That's just a wee brief insight into Scotrail. I'm sure there's much more that I could say, but in the short time I thought it would be useful just to bullet point a couple of those things. So why did Scotrail sign up to become an inclusive recruiter? I suppose rather than going through all of the points on the slide, I thought I would just try and sum it up. First things first, the qualification landscape in Scotland has undergone some significant changes. Qualification names, levels, the education system is moving away from only delivering the standards qualifications that people recognise, so national 4s, 5s and higher. And I think it's really important that employers start to understand how that qualification landscape has changed, and probably how employers need to change with that, so that we can understand the different range of qualifications, where that sits in terms of the levels alongside your more traditional qualifications. But ultimately, signing up or becoming an inclusive recruiter means that there's parity, there's equity across recruitment, particularly when people are coming with, I suppose, not the traditional route and not the traditional qualifications, and ultimately by using SCQF levels in recruitment rather than your more traditional qualifications like hires, like HNCs, like degrees, we can really widen the talent pool of applicants, particularly opening up to those applicants who have a variety of skills and experiences at the same level of qualification that you're looking for, and that really does ensure that, you know, you're opening up opportunities to a range of suitable candidates. It does offer a more inclusive and transparent awareness of knowledge, skills, and competencies required. Like Nicola showed you, the leveling tool is absolutely great to see where a job is, where you might want to, or what level you might want to put a job at, and that's the route that we want to go down, or we are going down. Where am I? I've lost my place. Sorry. The other thing it allows people to do is, I suppose it allows hiring managers. You know, we're a massive organisation with lots of job opportunities opening up each day, and I think if you're not keeping up to date with how the qualification landscape has changed, it's very easy just to think about, you know, the standard grades or the hires or the national fours or the fives, and I still hear people talking about O levels, you know, and I think that allows this being an inclusive recruiter and making that pledge allows us to do some work with hiring managers so that they can better understand how the qualification landscape has changed. We want to position Scotrail, you know, as a socially inclusive employer across Scotland, and we really don't want to exclude anybody based on having qualifications or not having qualifications. And you know, signing up to being an inclusive recruiter really does help with that. It allows you to understand the, you know, everything that's involved in learning about different qualifications and different levels of qualifications in relation to where a job's at. So I thought it was quite good, before I go into where we're starting, to go over a wee bit of Scotrail's current demographics, and I'm only going to touch on the ages of 16 to 30. Now, as you can probably see from the graph and the head count of the people who are 30 and below, there actually isn't a lot of people in the organisation who are below the age of 30. And this is one of the main areas that we are trying to tackle. We're trying to have more opportunities for apprenticeships and graduates and internships, and all the different early career opportunities that organisations would normally offer. And I suppose this is why we want to start with apprenticeships. We want to change how we market apprenticeships, how Scotrail views the qualifications needed to come and do an apprenticeship with Scotrail, and the type of people or the type of person that you're kind of looking for. So only about a year ago, we advertised jobs like the one on the left-hand side, where, I mean, this one still mentions standard grades, and standard grades have not been about for a number of years. And I'm not really sure what national grade means, but I assume that means national 4 or 5 level. So even just a year ago, Scotrail still advertised jobs to young people looking for standard grades or national 4s and 5s. But as mentioned, the education landscape has changed. Schools are delivering more and more qualifications outside the norm, outside the traditional typical qualifications that you might think a school or an education establishment will deliver. So we wanted to change that language so that when we're marketing opportunities, not just to young people, but to educators and influencers, we're keeping up with current language and where the employment landscape is moving to, and where the recruitment landscape is moving to. Excuse me. We want to make sure that young people or people in general understand the levels that you need to do a job in the organisation. So that's why we've kind of started with apprenticeships, is people's, not just the qualifications landscape, but as people's language around qualifications is changing, we wanted to make sure that we're keeping up with that. And we wanted to also make sure that we're recognising all the hard work and I suppose the change in qualifications that people might leave education establishments with, rather than just expecting people to have a National 4 or have a National 5 or have a higher. It's not all the time that people are going to have to, or going to come out of an education establishment with those traditional qualifications. You know, young people or people in general have so much going on in their life that it just might not be feasible at that point. It might not be feasible for somebody to sit an exam that a National 5 has or a higher has, but they may have done qualifications and developed skills, which is the most important thing, I suppose, in another fashion, and another qualification that might not have the same pressures attached to it. So I suppose that's why we're starting with apprenticeships. I'm heavily involved in apprenticeships in Scotrail, so that's the easiest bit for me to, I suppose, influence and trying to use that and trying to use that shift to create a bit of traction within the company. We actually had changed, so we had a graduate apprenticeship vacancy, and we actually changed the way we advertised it, using more inclusive language, and we actually saw an increase in 425% in applications, which is an incredible statistic. So that was really good, and we're trying to make sure that we're constantly using this language moving forward. So that's a wee bit about where we are and what we've done so far. We want to make sure that we're further embedding SCQF within Scotrail at every stage. There is, for us, there's a lot more awareness raising and education needed within the business, so that people understand, you know, what is SCQF, what has been an inclusive recruiter, what are the SCQF levels, and what skills and experience are people coming with. We want to review job descriptions and person specs so that it reflects, you know, SCQF levels and the skills and experience that people might have, rather than just having what Nicola said is a degree equivalent. You know, we need to provide training for staff and hiring managers on being an inclusive recruiter and what that means, and what part we can play in that, to make sure that we are getting the most suitable and experienced candidates, and so that people aren't feeling excluded. And learning development, we offer a whole range of in-house training programs, and we want to make sure that they are getting levelled and recognised in the SCQF framework. So a wee bit of personal experience from my point of view. This was, I suppose, a part of the job advert that I applied for to come to Scotrail. Now, I think it's worth noting that in years gone by, I would have probably been excluded for applying for jobs, because I think a lot of the time companies like to just attach a qualification to a job without really understanding that there might be people out there that don't have those traditional qualifications but might have the vocational experience. And this is a perfect example of that. You know, SCQF level 9 is mentioned. However, I don't have a degree. I don't have an SCQF level 4, and I don't have actually a lot of qualifications or any qualifications at SCQF level 9. But what I do have is 10 years of vocational experience that has allowed me to develop the skills and experience needed to do the job, which is really important. In years gone by, I have been knocked back for jobs. I've not applied for jobs. I've been excluded from applying for jobs simply because in years gone by that there has been a requirement to have a degree, particularly at that level. So for me, it was really refreshing to see a company trying to move in the right direction and trying to, you know, ensure that people are not being excluded. And I thought that was just a really useful point to make, that again, not everybody has the qualifications or the traditional qualifications and experience that people look for, but that does not mean that they can't do the job at the level that is being advertised. And I think, for me, to sum up Inclusive Recruiter, that's what it does. It includes the people in the application process that might otherwise have been excluded based on qualification level, and it allows people to showcase the skills and experiences that they personally have, rather than the tunnel vision view of what a recruitment tool or what a job should be and what experience is needed in that. So that's it for me. It's a very short presentation. I muddled my way through it. I think it's worth noting I get really nervous at presentations, that Nicola will tell you that. But my details are below. If anybody has any questions, then please let me know. And I've attached my email address to it just in case. I suppose there's more questions when people are finished. So thank you for listening. Thanks to Nicola for inviting me along. And apologies for another terrible presentation, Nicola.
Craig, it was fantastic, and thank you so much for coming along to help, because I know that it's not your favourite thing to do, but I really, really appreciate, because your story is not just interesting from the Scotrail side of things and why Scotrail got involved, but also from the personal side of things as well. You're exactly the right person to be in the job role you're in, looking to encourage more young people into apprenticeships, into employment with Scotrail. So it's fantastic, and from the experience that you've had coming up to now in the job roles that you've been doing, it's just an absolutely perfect match. Does anybody have any questions for either myself or Craig? Please feel free to unmute and chat, or pop something in the chat as well. Have we stunned you all with lots of information all at one time? No problem. Well, what I'll do is I'll just finish off then and just say that, please, if anyone's interested at all, feel free to drop me an email. My email's in the chat, and we can have a chat about how this might work within your organisation. Some people come at introducing the SCQF to their organisation from a recruitment point of view and then move it over into workforce development. Some people come from a workforce development point of view and move it over into recruitment. But we have a framework against which Scotland's qualifications are benchmarked. It's what underpins the vast majority of qualifications we have in Scotland. It makes sense to be using that language within recruitment and also within workforce development, helping to recognise, oh, somebody can't see anything in the chat. Could you please put my email up? Yep, no problem at all. I will just share that first slide again. And sorry, it's sitting right over my thing. There we go. So please do feel free to get in touch. And if there's anything I can help with, I would be very happy to help. I now can't see the chat, so let me just get that working again. There we go. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming along today, and thank you again, Craig, for coming along and helping. If there's anything we can do for you, please feel free to drop us a line.
Nicola,
Thank you very much.
Nicola,
Yep.
Liam has a question. He has his hand up.
Oh, I'm terrible at not being able to see hands. Liam, sorry. Please unmute and ask your question.
Hello. First of all, just thanks for that, Nicola and Craig. I thought it was a really good presentation. And I'm just really excited to hear where this is potentially going, albeit I can see there's huge challenges for employers to get on that journey. I guess for me, seeing an example of the essential criteria for Craig, your job role, that was really interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm potentially seeing coming out of this, and it comes back to Nicola, what you were saying about getting on board with the language. There was a word in there that threw up a bit of a kind of vagueness around what would potentially be accepted. So I think I wrote down preferably educated to preferably to SCQF level 9. So I guess just what does that actually mean in terms of what we're willing to accept when you're saying preferably to? Is it that we're looking for level 9, or is it we're willing to accept something at the same level, but just not, yeah. I guess that word just kind of threw me in terms of what do we mean by that preferably. It makes it sound like we're willing to accept something lower than SCQF level 9. And sorry, and the second question was just about the, I think as well, there was a the second line said about or equivalent vocational experience. And again, I think as much as I agree with what you're saying, the previous way of doing job descriptions isn't very inclusive, but it was clear in terms of what was accepted. So for example, right, we're looking for a degree in this subject.
Yep.
And I just wonder if that language, any equivalent vocational experience, would the labour market understand what that meant, and how would they know whether they had the necessary vocational experience required? Do employers provide a guide or some sort of, you know, steer so they can understand themselves? So I guess that was my two questions.
No problem. I think the word preferably for me is a little bit vague, so it's maybe not something that we would suggest. I'm just finding my slide there. I'll just go back the way. There we go. So when we're talking, when I discuss things with employers, and we work out a wording that works for you, but usually I would suggest being fairly clear about which SCQF level you're looking at. And what we've done is we've created web pages out of these. So if you put in your job advert, while the population are changing over to understanding this as well, we're in a transition period. So we're working, anyone who's working in schools understands SCQF. If you're in colleges and universities, you'll understand SCQF. So people coming out are the range of different people. So working with migrant workers, Ministry of Defence, the work we're doing, we've created a tool on our website which is based on these levels, which has pages so that you can work up and work down and find out where you sit in the employer levelling tool. So what we suggest is that you, at the moment, while things are moving over, you can use a link to a web page that will describe the skills and experience as it has in the levelling tool. You can also put in some examples, for example, and put as many examples as you can. But as long as it's not putting people off from applying, that's the key thing. That they're not saying, right, I don't have a degree, but I can still apply for this. So that's really the using of the links, and just we're working elsewhere to try and build up the public's understanding to get them describing themselves in these terms as well. And what we're doing is we're also working with employers to try and encourage them to use SCQF levels in their workforce development as well, so that regularly throughout your development processes, whatever you call them, PDRs, PMRs, that you're working with your employees to help them recognise what level they're actually working at, as opposed to what their qualifications might suggest. So if we start doing this, we start to change that language around recruitment and around people's skills and abilities. So very, very important for people to recognise, and for employers to recognise what level they're actually working at. So when I talk to people working with this tool, and quite often people will want to know, right, where do I sit? So we'll go through the pages until they find what describes them, and you can visibly see them growing in their seats, because it comes with a recognising that you're working at a higher level than you thought you were, can really build your confidence. But it also then lets you look at making sure you're getting the right training for your staff, making sure that your staff can see where they are now and what they might need to do in order to get to the next stage up within your organisation. So it helps with those career journeys within your organisation as well. So we are in a transition time at the moment, so using some of these tools to just be a little bit more clear and to let people know that yes, we're asking for SCQF 9, but it's level 9, but if you click through to this, this describes what you want. The most inclusive thing is not to put any qualifications in at all. But then you're leaving your people open to not having any kind of clue where it is they sit and whether it would be right for them. So providing that SCQF level gives that steer about where they see the fitting. So really we're asking for your help to change the language around all of this.
No, that's helpful, and the linking out to the leveling kind of tool, I think would be very useful for anyone applying for the kind of that role. So that's good. I guess finally, I just would like to understand from what I'm looking at on screen, when would it be relevant to say that this would suit someone working at a specific level, but then ask them to be educated at a higher level?
Educate, which one are you talking?
So I can see on the screen you're saying that the role would suit someone working at SCQF level 6, but you will be educated to SCQF level 8. So it's kind of suggesting that they should be educated to higher level.
No, these are just different examples of different wordings. You wouldn't use them all.
Right, I've got you, right.
Well, that would
okay,
be very confusing, yes.
Yes, right, okay, no, that's fine. Thank you
It's
for
just
that.
examples of wording. It very much depends what industry you're working in, the type of wording you would use. You will need to have very specific types of skills and experience in certain roles.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to satisfy people. But
No,
there is,
thank you.
as we know, a skills shortage at the moment, but there's also a shortage of recognizing the skills that some people have. And that's what we're trying to tackle. Craig, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I think it was just to say, based on Liam's question, I thought it was quite good to share the extract from the job advert that I applied for. And I think it's worth noting that Scotrail were very early on and are still very early on in our inclusive recruiter journey. And I think it's worth noting that sometimes people use words that probably don't fit because they think they're using the right words, and then as you advertise the next again job, you start to question whether that is the right wording to use, or being a bit more clear. So I suppose signing up to being an inclusive recruiter is as much a journey for the employer as it is anything else, really. And I think that there's loads of learning opportunities, and SCQF are great to give advice, guidance. I don't know how many times I've emailed Nicola over the past few months to what does this word sound like, do I need this word in, and really just annoying the life out SCQF. But I think to have that support there from an organisation who understand it the best allows an employer like us to then get to a point where we're creating language in the job advert that fits, that meets the needs of what we want, that meets the needs of the people looking to apply. And we've actually started in our apprenticeships actually putting in a link to the SCQF framework so that people find it easier to find where they are in the framework. So I just thought I would come in and say that job advert was posted very early on in changing the language from your ordinary degree or masters or whatever it might be, to try and to, I suppose, include a more inclusive language. So yeah.
Absolutely, it's very much a journey, and yeah, we're here to help you with whatever you require along the way. And I'm always happy to hear from you, Craig. Do not worry about that at all. Brilliant. So we're not just here for the beginning and then drop you. We're happy to continue support you with using SCQF in your workforce development, training, recruiting managers, HR staff, whoever needs trained. We are happy to do that. Right, I'm just going to check if there's anything else in the chat. I think that's everything. Am I missing anything, Maureen?
No.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If any questions come to you, please feel free to get in touch. And it's been lovely to see you all this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.